Welcome to Central Division Hockey, the podcast. I'm your host, Tim Bigelow, and today pleased to be joined by my friend and previous podcast, first class podcast co-host, Warren Smith, for a preview of Colorado and Edmonton, the Western Conference Finals for 2022, and not the McDavid versus MacKinnon UFC style one-on-one NHL promotional machine. Firstly, how one-dimensional does the NHL think its fan base is, or the NHL major media, to oversimplify such a great series that we're going to have and its necessity to sell stars instead of the team game, which really bugs me. And I think, Warren, you like me, maybe you do like that marketing of the, superstars head-to-head. And welcome to the pod.
Yo, what up? It's been a while. Stained, not default.
Yeah.
We're talking just before we jumped on here. Inside joke. But fucking, right off the gate, dropping the F-bombs. But yeah, I don't know about it is an oversimplification, but I understand why. That's the thing. It's like, if you look at the North American sports market, right, you have the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and then the NHL. You'd have to say that the NHL right now, they're trying to reach out as much as they can to the youth, the younger people of the world, the Chell kids, NHL 22, they call it Chell. It drove me nuts forever. But it's like they're trying to appeal to them. They want to show more personality, more characters, more storylines. So the reality TV world that we live in, right? So I get it, I understand. If it's going to grow the game, I'm okay with it to an extent. It's like, sure, sell the whole McDavid versus MacKinnon. That's all that matters kind of thing. Because they are the two biggest superstars in the game, hands down, the best players in the game. So I understand the perspective. Obviously, it's a team sport. That's one thing you can always see in post-game interviews that's different with hockey than every other sport. What do you notice, man? It's like every time what do they do in the NHL that they don't do in other sports? They always give all the props to all their teammates. Every time they have a big game, it's because their teammates did this, that, and the other thing. So players by nature in hockey, when they're being interviewed, they have a way of speaking that is still very team oriented, which I think comes through to the audience and to the kids as well, which is a good thing. But so the NHL is trying to sell the other side of that, the personality, that's what I look at it as.
Well, it's just when you think comparatively to the NBA, and you've only got like 5 guys, and maybe a few guys come in during a whole game. Like you could have like a superstar that really, can control and win a game single-handedly. Hockey isn't that sport, and so
unless you're the Edmonton Oilers, right? Remember that's what the Calgary Flames said. Hey, one guy, that's it. Draisaitl, same amount of points, but only one player beat him, right?
Yeah. We'll let you have the McDavid's having a phenomenal playoffs, or so I've been told. But I will say this: that's really an exception, like an exception to the rule. And to me, that also means that, like most years, basically, he's having to explain why he didn't win and why he didn't get far enough because the team around him isn't good enough to help him get there. So I think it sets the NHL up for a fall because, a guy really can't single-handedly do it, even though in this playoffs.
Yeah, not compared to other sports for sure. Basketball is the perfect example of that. I think every other North American sport, football, there's a million players on both sides of the ball. You need to have both sides aren't even contributing to each other, right? Like the offense and defense are separate units. And then in baseball, there's just so many factors with the bullpen, starting pitching, defense, offense, calls one way or the other kind of thing. But with hockey, it's like you have 4 lines or 11 and 7, right? Like 3 lines and 2 or 3 D pairings, and every one of them have to contribute in order to win a championship more often than not. Like it's very hard. Anytime in history, even if you look back at the Oilers dynasties with Wayne Gretzky, like you needed to have multiple contributors in order to win a cup. Otherwise, you lose to the Islanders, right? It happens. It doesn't matter if you have the best player in the
20
game.
guys. 20 guys are playing every night for both teams. 40 guys on that playing surface.
Yeah, so definitely an oversimplification. It's not just that, but it's so exciting, man. Just imagining. I'm so pumped for tonight. I can't even begin to express. We were talking. It's like you wanted the Blues. You're kind of pulling a little bit for the Blues, right, to win. I feel like, and I have a couple other buddies, the same deal. They like the Blues team more. But I just thought the Avalanche, the interchangeable parts, their defense, the way they flow and everything, they're so exciting to watch. I love watching them play just from a fan perspective. They're exciting and explosive, and the way the Oilers have been playing, the level McDavid has been playing at, Draisaitl and everything, like the excitement of having those lines against each other, potentially matching up, just speed for speed. Makar on the ice, McDavid and MacKinnon, which all could have been on the Canadian Olympic team had that happened this year, which would have been amazing, the speed and the power play. But now they're gonna be playing head to head. Like, what's more exciting? As much as I like the Blues, they're a great team. Like,
well, you know
this
what?
is exciting, man.
To be honest with you, the team I thought that was knocking off Colorado was Minnesota. St. Louis came in and knocked them off.
There you go.
And so, no, I had Colorado. I had Colorado over St. Louis. I thought Minnesota, if anybody was knocking off Colorado, that was going to be the team. And they couldn't even get past St. Louis to be the team to even get the shot to do it.
That's what Chip Pedigree does, right? Chip Pedigree for the Blues.
Yeah.
Got him over the hump.
Yeah, they definitely had it, but they didn't have it against Colorado. Okay, so you know when MacKinnon was asked about the clickbait, he said no star is quite like McDavid. Oh, sorry, no, this was a sports. This is a Sportsnet's titled their article this morning, just to give you a like put some wings on McDavid. Sportsnet's title on a story this morning. No star is quite like
Put
McDavid.
some wings on McDavid.
At last, he's on a stage where the whole hockey world will watch. That's what Sportsnet said today on their article on McDavid. So they're really amping it up. What MacKinnon was quoted as saying about head-to-head, hopefully that gets more viewers and lower escrow. Other than that,
yeah, I know. I love that quote. That's a great quote. I remember hearing that too. Yeah.
So the pathway, and admittedly, I've said this. Like I watched maybe 30 minutes in total of the Edmonton Calgary battle of who cares in Alberta.
That just depresses me, man. Like, you just missed out on so much. Thank God you had me filling you in, bro.
Well, that's why I wanted you on here to talk about the Edmonton perspective. So talk about their pathway through LA and through Calgary.
Well, to sum it up as quick as possible, I'd say the thing that stood out the most was actually some of the production from guys that aren't their superstars for me. Even though there's a lot of talk about lacking of depth and things like that. Zach Hyman scored a bunch of goals for them. They had a bunch of different dudes that helped them get through to the other side. Obviously, Draisaitl and McDavid played out of his mind in that series. There's some clutch scoring and whatnot, but the fact that they were able to lose that game 6 and find a way to win game 7, that was if you look back a few seasons when the Jets knocked their ass out of the playoffs, they didn't have the same level of resiliency. They were able to we clogged them up. We, as in the Winnipeg Jets, because I'm a Jets homer, clogged them up in the neutral zone, right? The Kings, even though that's kind of what they are, were not able to do that in game 7. They were able to get over that hump finally after all these years. And McDavid, who had performances in the past in the playoffs were subpar to who he is as a player, that's kind of been a knock on him. And then all of a sudden this year, he went from being the best player in the game to being the best, like historically good, and was able to elevate his game to a point where he could carry his team. That was it. He carried them to get to the round, to the Flames, to have Draisaitl to break out and be Draisaitl, and then have other guys step up. In the Flames series, there were so many turning points where things could have gone sideways. They shit the bed so hard. Those that down 3-0 in a blink of an eye, right in game 1, and push back, and then the Flames still get the dub. That could have been curtains. That could have been that sets you up for a sweep. Lose 5-6 if you're lucky. That looked awful right out the gate. And then for them to push, even though they lost, come back and then get that game 2 is huge. To kick their ass in game 3 the way they did, just flying around the rink. I think a really noticeable thing that stood out was I didn't think the Oilers used to play with a lot of jam. I didn't think they hit a lot. I didn't think they were very physical. Their bottom 6 guys, like under the radar guys that only play a few minutes a night, Cassian and Archibald were just crushing dudes, crushed each other at one point behind the net. Remember that big smash?
I was going to say Warren Fogle as well would be another.
Yeah, like just like unsung heroes, man. I said to you before too about Duncan Keith. Like very subtle. I think he's got like, what do I have him down here for? Like 5 points, 6 points, not a lot of point production, but he's just a stabilizing force back there, makes a lot of good decisions with the puck. Darnell Nurse is doing Darnell Nurse things, just being solid back there. But they had some contributions in the last game with Bouchard crushing one from the point and Nurse finally scoring. So they had some depth D scoring, which helped. And they had a guy like Zach Hyman was the turning point in the series for me. That PK goal that he got just crushed the soul of the Flames, really. And then I know you don't like Yamamoto. You said to me you thought he should be in the minor leagues, but I'm telling you, man, I watched him closely. I've never seen him be as physical and win as many battles for a little guy, like behind the net on the game.
It's not a size thing.
The game winning goal that Nuge scored, right? That was Yamamoto winning a battle behind the net and then getting him the puck. And think about that, Mike Smith. I'd catch myself. That goal was so atrocious, 200-footer, like. That was ridiculous. That's the first goal. Okay, of watching the games live, the first goal that I caught in that series was that goal that Mike Smith. And I remember, I think you were talking. After I've been messaging you, telling you how great the Oilers are
playing out of his head. I'm like, really?
Yeah, I know. Oh my God.
So, and then and I catch McDavid, like take over in overtime, and I didn't watch the whole game.
Yeah.
I caught the end of the third in overtime. I didn't realize he hadn't had that big of a contribution, but he took over.
Yeah, really. It was like 2 games previous where it was like, it kind of looked like McDavid if you're going down to the rink, and like it was like older kids against little kids, man. It was like men among boys. Like he was slicing and dicing the defense up ridiculous, like cutting through 3 or 4 guys at a time, fending guys off. To me, the whole series started with McDavid crushing Buddy in the corner, like just absolutely smashing him shoulder to chest, knocked the guy on his ass. That set the tone for the entire series for the Oilers. So everybody played the same way. Everybody was blocking shots. That's what I'm saying. I didn't think that they had much jam in their game. I didn't think the Oilers were physical. I thought that they've been too much of a finesse team in the past, but their bottom 6 has no business being finesse because they don't have that, And I think that they found that. And then Zach Hyman from the Leafs, I love it because I hate the Leafs for one. And now Zach Hyman comes over and he's just been an absolute stud for them in the playoffs, right? He's a good player. He does the things that they didn't have. I
thought it was a good deal because it took a real good limelight away from the M&Ms, Marner and Matthews. And
another pro.
But it seemed like he really
like he got no love, right? He's a no love guy. Yeah, we used to talk about back in the day with some guys, right? On our Jets podcast.
But he doesn't really fit. He's not even really playing with McDavid.
Because he does, though, here and there. It's like a split between him and Kane. Kane got the majority of the run, but you notice when the tide was changing, well, I don't know if you were watching it, but when things were going a little sideways, and then, I don't know, Kane was not playing as well. Like, Kane gets a little bit egocentric at times with the way he plays, if you will. He had a couple lackluster shifts where he didn't come back in the zone enough, wasn't strong on the boards, and just trying to leak out of the zone like it's the regular season, 15 games in. So then that's what I like about Jay Woodcroft, man. I think he's a good coach. He pulled the trigger at the right time multiple times in that series. I put a lot of on that series of them dominating the way they did and closing it out the way they did on him, the way he held that team together, the way they kept him focused, never getting rattled, and making the switches at the right time. He switched Hyman with Kane at the right time, switched him back, and then switched him again. He just pulled it at the right time, right? It's like when in baseball, when you need to bring in the bullpen guy, when the guy doesn't have enough in the tank, he's not giving you enough. That kind of thing, man.
One more guy that I think Colorado, like for the Colorado fans listening to this, before we talk about Colorado more specifically about Edmonton, would be Evan Bouchard, because they know Tyson Barrie because before he ended up in Edmonton,
of course,
he was in an Avalanche. And I was kind of thinking right now, no disrespect to Tyson Barrie, but I'm not even sure. Well, if Sam Girard was healthy and Tyson Barrie was in Colorado still, he wouldn't be in the game day lineup.
Tyson Barrie's playing well, man. He's just not putting up points. He's doing good things for them, though. But that's the thing, though. But underrated defensive core with the Oilers, I'd say that.
Yeah.
Say the Avalanche are flashier for sure. The Avalanche, I love watching them.
You know
play.
what though?
Can you
I
express
hate
it?
that. I hate that you get the focus on the Byrams, the Gerards, and
But their
the
whole decor,
and
they can all skate.
and yeah, they all can
Like
skate.
everybody
But
on the Avalanche.
but you know what? Eric Johnson, who's playing on the bottom pairing, is still a top 4 quality defenseman.
Dude, I like Gerard, man. That was
at the
brutal when he got
NHL level.
injured. Gerard can skate, man.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they all can skate. But
Yeah, he's
Eric
a player, too.
Johnson, who's in a 5 spot on this team, is literally still a top 4 quality defenseman.
Yeah.
And you still have Byram now paired with Josh Manson. Great second pairing.
I like
And
Josh
you've got
Manson.
Devin Taves and Cale Makar would have been the top pair on Team Canada at the Olympics had they gone. We got robbed of that.
That's why I had the
Absolute
Habs going to the
garbage.
cup and winning it all, man.
Yeah.
That's the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
I think based on what I've seen, well, we can talk about that later, but like I do feel like the Avalanche still to me are, I think they have the best shot to knock off.
That's what we're talking about. You've been watching Edmonton's run more so than I've been, and I've been following Colorado. And I mean, I've watched every game going back to the bubble with this team, regular season, playoff, year after year. I've watched every Avalanche game, but I mean, with the division that the podcast that I'm doing and the audio stuff, I mean, that's the reason for it. When we talk about goaltending,
They're also just really fun to watch, right?
Yeah.
Like they're just super fun to watch. Like,
but they draft and develop that puck moving defenseman is a big thing. So I said this about the guys that they traded away at the deadline. Drew Hellison, who was on the U.S. team that won gold at the World Championships, not the one that got canceled mid, but the one before, and also Byram was there for Canada at the one in 2019, or no, 2021, I guess.
Yeah.
The one before the one that got canceled, but US one. And the other guy that was there was, of course, the Baron that went.
I remember watching Byram at
Montreal.
World Juniors.
Yeah.
And he was like just heads and above everybody the way that guy skated. You just knew he was going to be an unbelievable.
Justin Barron, Morgan's brother, who's
Morgan Barron's bro.
Yeah. And he's puck moving defense. He's going to be a great top 4 defenseman. So Colorado's all in. They traded away top first round quality defensemen that literally in 3 to 5 years, if you had put them with Gerard and Makar that, it would have been insane. They're in to win right now. They have to win it. For the
what I think doesn't get talked about though with Colorado is so much, which gets talked about a lot with chip teams, about T-Bay. I talk about it all the time, the culture and everything like that. Feel like the Avalanche have a solid culture, a solid core. Like when you look at Landeskog as a leader and Rantanen as a leader, like the way they play the game, and MacKinnon, how he drives so hard all the time and plays with no fear, taking the puck to the net. I feel like that rubbed off on Kadri. Like I feel like the way he played with the Leafs, he had more of an outside game. He could score. He still scored 30 goals or something a couple times, right? But I feel like he elevated his game in both sides of the puck. He became a really good two-way player, one of the best two-way players in the game since coming to Colorado. And I don't think that's by accident. I think that's coaching, and I think that's leadership group for the Avalanche.
Well, yeah, you know what, Jared Bednar can is not appreciated. It's the expectation. It's kind of like John Cooper in Tampa Bay. I mean, arguably probably the best coach. He'll never win Coach of the Year because, you got Andre Vasilevsky. Of course, you're gonna the Coach of the Year in the NHL. And I hate the individual awards, quite honestly, but it's the coach of the team we didn't expect to be as good as they ended up being.
100%.
That's who wins that award.
Yeah, it's not the team you expect to win.
Yeah,
or the team that has because people go, well, this team has so much talent, so anybody could take them to the cup. Anybody could, win a chip with them.
So can Mike Smith stay healthy enough to get Edmonton through?
Well, and will the real Mike Smith show up? The guy, because if you look at the pedigree of Mike Smith, he did win an Olympic gold medal with Team Canada, so he's played under pressure situations. If you take away, because it's easy to point to the fact.
How long ago was that, man?
2014. It's been a while. Right? It's been a while. Yeah, see? Yeah, it's been a while, but at the end of the day, he's played big games and performed well before in the past. And in his
last conference appearance is over a decade ago, man.
Hey, don't hate on the old guys, man. Okay, we're both getting old now. Just give them a
I
little
know
love.
we are too.
Hey, you don't think this is his last chance? This is his last dance, man. This is his chance to win
I
a cup.
thought
You
that
don't think
2
he's going to be
years
locked
ago.
and loaded
I
and ready
thought
to
that
go?
2 years ago. I thought
Listen.
after they got swept by Winnipeg last year, they
All
realized.
right. All right. 1 second. We're going to go stats and facts here. Okay.
By the way, Kemper, who people have been criticizing, did not have a bad series against St. Louis. Lots of defensive mistakes. But talk about Mike Smith. I want to give some love to
Okay.
Darcy Kemper.
We'll just stats and facts here. Okay.
Edmonton too cheap
Mike
to get a
Smith,
goalie.
411 shots against. Kemper had 218. Goals against average 270 versus 244 for Kemper. Save percentage for Mike Smith. This actually blew my mind. 927. Kemper 904. Stats and facts. Whose numbers are better?
Yeah, but I
Just stats and facts, though.
Well, I look
whose numbers are better? What
I
save
look-
percentage?
I look at St. Louis as the best team that either of these teams had to play in a playoff series. Like Nashville,
Fair enough.
what did I say? You learn nothing from the sweep in Nashville. That was a gimme.
It was the easiest walk in the
Yeah.
entire
Yeah, exactly. And
NHL
they
playoff.
got it to be a little bit more rested up. St. Louis, that's a real series. Edmonton, Calgary was banged up, and I talked to you about this. Chris Tannen's going to be out 6 months, like after multiple surgeries.
Yeah, and you
Kachuk was
said
playing
Kachuk
Yeah,
had a broken
wrist, I think it was something to do with
that's
the hand.
crazy. I didn't realize.
So that top line, which Calgary needs to generate offense, and Markstrom was mediocre, man. He's
Yeah,
like,
but I will say, like Mike Smith, when it was time to lock it down, to shut the door, like kind of back in the day. I'm not going to give him this level of props yet. Let's be serious. He hasn't done that kind of great shit for the Oilers in the playoffs yet. He has been a weaker link-ish, right? Despite the numbers, I feel like those numbers are flattering. 927 save percentage, to be honest.
but low scoring LA team and then a low scoring Calgary team. That's who they're playing. Back to back rounds.
Well, I mean, he did allow 9 or whatever in the first game. Like there was that. But or did he allow? I don't know how many he was in for out of the 9. I don't know. I don't even know. Should look that up. That would have been good before that. It's 7, 6. I don't know.
I don't know. It was a football score.
Ridiculous.
I
game.
thought-
Might have been like
I thought it was
4 or 5.
I thought it was a Canadian Football League. I thought the Elks
Yeah, I
were
know.
playing the Stampeders.
That game was absolutely nuts. But what I mean is, I don't think Smith has played nearly his best. He's letting some weak ones, but just like Kemper, I feel like a few of those shots, if you look back, check the game tape, right? If you look back at it, there were some that rode up defenseman sticks and shit, some screens. You're like, he should have. In my mind, I still feel like if your positioning is good, you make those saves.
Look, that the one game where Kemper basically the fault goal that opened the scoring by St. Louis, he comes over. I know Hendrik Lundqvist on TNT was complaining about him coming over too far, but the defenseman is supposed to take and position himself to take away the far side corner, and that's where Falk put it, and the defenseman wasn't there. Then you got the egregious turnover at the blue line, and then Manson plays the puck carrier, and the defenseman's job is always to take away the pass. So Kemper is out of the crease going for the shooter because the goalie is supposed to take the shooter. And then when the pass gets across, of course.
Are you talking about the one where it looked like he was doing the 80s style, stacking the pad, slide across? Is that the goal you're talking about? There's some crazy shit.
So the 2-on-1 that Manson scores on was one of that. Like there's a ton of goals, and early in the series there were goals that went off defender sticks, redirecting it into spots. He makes those saves if those defensemen sticks aren't on those shots.
Honestly, I think both goalies have to perform at a substantially higher level, or we're going to see some fire wagon, ridiculous high numbers. I don't think it will be that, even though that's exciting and it's like that. That's the
okay. So if we talk about it, I think key to the Colorado over St. Louis was Colorado has the ability to get on the cycle off a transition, and St. Louis couldn't do it, and that comes to speed. Now, Edmonton has speed. I get that. Colorado has speed. And it's interesting because neither of the teams have faced a team with comparable speed. It still comes down to zone exits, and the transition game.
One thing I'll say on that though, and I agree, is like, will the Avalanche enter the zone with speed with the puck on their stick? Because dump and chasing on Mike Smith, not usually a good thing. Like he is the sixth man when it comes to Oilers as far as being able to stretch back. So as long as they don't dump and chase, if they can enter the zone cleanly and get the cycle game going, then that's a huge advantage.
It's all in the defensemen jumping up with Colorado. But if you look at the zone exits that they do, they skate it out. You don't actually get on the forecheck against Colorado most because of that defensive group and their skating ability. So
just keep in mind, the Avalanche are going to spend a lot of time on their own end when McDavid's on the ice, when that McDavid Draisaitl line's on the ice. So they're going to have to do that when they're not on the ice. And are they running matchups? Is McDavid going to be going up straight up against MacKinnon? McKinnon's line, how is that going to play out? You know? Because if they are,
I actually think when Colorado's at home, they're going to throw Kadri out there and free up MacKinnon.
Well, that would be the smart move.
And Colorado this playoff run has kept Rantanen with Kadri and kept Landeskog and MacKinnon with Lehkonen generally on that top line.
That's what'll be interesting is how long will it take? How much will the Oilers have to be pressing the Avalanche or McDavid go off before they make the switch and put that line back together, Rantanen with Landeskog and MacKinnon, do you think?
I don't know. And the other thing, a guy that's really underrated, and Edmonton fans might get an appreciation for Valery Nishnushkin.
Yeah, he's good. He actually is a guy. Stood out to me. His physicality.
And he's a good two-way defensive guy that I think, and he's got size. So he's a guy that can match up with a guy like Draisaitl and still contribute. There's a lot of depth with Colorado. And like a year ago, I would say, you know what? If an injury had happened to like Gerard, it would have been Jacob McDonald coming in to the lineup. And you go, who? Because he's a career American Hockey League. And now Gerard goes down. It's Jack Johnson that comes in. And, oh, by the way, Ryan Murray is still available. Another veteran NHLer if somebody else goes down. That's how much more deep. And I haven't even brought up Curtis McDermott, who's even further down the depth chart. That's a huge difference. This team is now locked and loaded. So they play four lines. Nico Baykubel's the only guy that hasn't actually got a point of the guys that have played all 10 games. But the Oilers.
What'll be interesting to see, I think, matchup might be interesting is to see if Kadri's line goes up against the top line against the Oilers, what kind of battles Evander Kane and he have. I think those two could be at each other's throats. The style of how they play, they're both fast, intense, and aggressive, finishing all their checks. That could be a good battle, those two guys.
You know what?
And will Kane bring it in the series the way he did against the Flames? Can he contribute? I highly doubt on the level he did against the Flames, and Markkanen was brutal. But can he bring it on that level to elevate the line to be the best line in the playoffs the way they've been? Like, that's going to be a storyline too. Like, can Kane be the same guy that he was in the conference finals that he was?
Well, they need Edmonton's going to need secondary scoring. I think
they need a little more from Nuge too. Like, he got that clutch game winner, but they need a little bit more from him as well.
Well, I think I said to you, I think they got 5 of a top 6. I think they're still one shy of it.
I think you're still underplaying Yamamoto, bro. Don't hate a little Yamamoto. He's got a motor, man.
You know, I watched him in regular season games and I was really high on him. And then I've watched him be a ghost in the playoffs for multiple years. Like the year Chicago, like at Edmonton played, like Chicago knocked them off and Yamamoto was a ghost.
Nah, man, he's not the problem. The ghost for the Oilers right now. They need to put out like Milk Carton Dano from First Class Podcast. They got to put out sign in a bat signal in the air for Paharvey. The only goal that he has was one on the goal line, a free gift. He's done nothing. He's not overly physical. He's not doing anything to do anything, man. Like, he's literally been a ghost the entire playoffs, and he's supposed to be a difference maker. He's supposed to be a guy they brought to be on the top 6. He's not. but like he's contributed nothing. So if he doesn't get a couple
I
goals,
thought he contributed as much playing over in Europe before they brought him back.
pretty much, man.
Yeah.
If he stayed over in Europe, he would have contributed as much.
You know what? If he was more of a Warren Fogle type of like North American player, he would fit on a third line, but he doesn't have that grit.
No, that's what I'm saying, man. It's not like he's like blocking shots with his face, Brandon Tanev style, or doing anything like that. You know, like.
So you wanted to talk X factors. We got a bit of time for that, and then like make some predictions here because we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, sounds cool.
So X factors who you got for the teams?
Oh yeah, X factor for me. Well, so far in the playoffs has been Hyman and Kadri, and I still see those two as the guys that are the contributors. Because for me, for Hyman, what he's contributed is that like what they've been lacking the last few years in the playoffs is right in the crease, in the blue paint, the battles in front of the net, getting those garbage goals, and occasionally on the PK, the way he can get you one here and there, and just his willingness to block shots.
That's why Matthews and Marner were better with Hyman.
Pretty tenacious. Yeah, exactly. He's like that different style. Right. And then there's Kadri for me. I feel like if he continues to play the way he plays, which one of those guys plays better in the conference finals? I think those guys are the guys.
I told you before we started this, I think Mikko Rantanen, who is at a point per game, it's all been assists, he looked to me near the end of the St. Louis series like he's going to have some monster games here.
Yeah, you feel he's due. I feel he's due as well. It's like, yeah. But how soon?
But I wouldn't call him the X factor. I'm actually going to say that it's Valeri Nichushkin based on matchups, because I think he's got the ability to contribute offensively from a Colorado perspective, and on an Edmonton perspective.
I didn't even really know who that guy was until watching him in the last couple of rounds of the playoffs. Man, he's a good player, eh?
Yeah, and yeah, consistently. And I honestly want to say too, I think, and maybe not so much this year, Tyson Barrie hasn't had as good of a year as he did the year before. But Darnell.
Hey, there you go. That guy playing against his old team, that guy has to be an X factor. That guy could find a little extra juice, and he can be a difference maker for them, because he only has like 4 points in the playoffs so far.
But I think,
he's skating well.
I think Darnell Nurse has to try and keep up with Makar. And
yeah, well, that's a difficult task.
And that might be a difference maker, because Darnell Nurse can contribute to the offense. Edmonton's going to need that as much as Colorado has the ability to do it too. So Barrie and Nurse, to me, if they have good series, that helps Edmonton. If they don't,
Barrie and Bouchard, from an offensive perspective, they can chip in. I just want Darnell Nurse to be able to lock down Makar.
But that's the thing is, I don't think you can lock down Makar. I think he needs to get the point production to help balance that equation out.
No, I mean on Edmonton's perspective, they need Nurse to be. They need him more from a defensive perspective, just the defense side of things. They don't need much from him offensively. If he produces, he produces, but they need him to be shut down.
If he doesn't produce, they don't win the series.
Yeah, I don't know, man. To me, I think his job is to be dominant defensively, win all the battles in the corner, and not allow time and space for their offensive weapons.
It is the goal differential won't favor Edmonton if they don't get something from their back end.
Yeah, and for the two guys that I see are Bouchard and Barrie. Those are the two guys that I see offensively on the back end.
And yet, but year after year, who's the guy that leads that team in points up from the defense?
Yeah, but you're looking at a guy that puts up 35 points in 71 games this year, and Tyson Barrie put up 41 in 81. So comparatively, they're
comparatively 1
every 2 games.
Yeah,
right. So about the same point production, except Darnell Nurse logs more minutes in his
special teams. Special teams. How is Edmonton on
special teams, man? Holy shit, that's a big one. Who's gonna get the kills, especially early in the game? Keep Captain Mo on their side, or swing it to their side, especially on home team.
What I'm thinking is that Colorado's speed is gonna catch Edmonton by surprise.
Yeah, that's why my heart goes, like, if we're doing predictions. For predictions, I'd say my heart is Edmonton in 7, but my head says Colorado in 6. then
And I told you, I think
the speed is
this
going to be problematic. The overwhelming speed.
I think this is done in 4.
Yeah,
and
I think you're absolutely batshit crazy.
I know. You know what?
There's no way McDavid is going to get swept by himself. He will. It doesn't even matter, man. He'll pick everybody up, put them on his shoulders, just be an absolute beast.
The obvious choice from what I saw.
We got to make a bet on that.
Was the expectation, like the lowest odds are Colorado in 5. So that's what everybody will mostly be going with. The lowest odds are them to sweep. Conversely, by the way, betting on an Edmonton sweep would give you the best return on investment.
Yeah, that would be.
Except you're just throwing your money.
You'd have to have broken brain syndrome.
Yeah, you'd be throwing your money away because they're not.
Straight games. There's no way the Oilers are winning 4 straight games against the Avs.
But and the other thing is, I really think injuries play into this. But Colorado has guys not playing in the lineup that can come in. Like Alex Newhook has only played a couple games, and that young prospect is, going to be a second line at worst center. Like Colorado won't miss.
No, can Mike Smith be the 2014 gold medal, Olympic winning chip goalie? That's the question. Or will the old man short side shit goals every now and then get confused when he's coming up as net goalie be getting burnt left and right?
There's no
snipers in the Avalanche.
This is the thing. There's too many question marks with Edmonton, and there's no room for error when you're playing Colorado. And not a team now that's got to this 3rd round. They don't have any more doubts on this. And
I will say this, though. As much as I say MacKinnon is a superstar like McDavid, there's still levels. There's a gap. There's a difference that just is. As much as Avalanche fans, I'm sure, absolutely hate that. McDavid put up 123 points this year. MacKinnon put up 88 points. Facts don't care about your feelings. That is a huge gap. The number 1 guy on the Avalanche Rantanen, 92. Draisaitl, 110. So their 2 superstars are superstars, legit beasts, and they play on the same line together. And if Kane keeps rolling, or the coach can continue to make the switches at the right time to put Zach Hyman in there, and that top line is rolling, playing every second shift, man, they don't take too many shifts off. They're out every second shift. So the Avalanche have to stop that, the best line in hockey right now in the playoffs, not over the period of the last 5 years. I would say you're right as far as Landeskog, Rantanen, and MacKinnon being the best line in hockey for the last 3-4 years for sure. 5-on-5, even though this year the Calgary Flames had the best 5-on-5 line with which was shut down completely, even if they were injured, right? The Goudreau line was the best line 5-on-5, not McKinnon's line, right? But they're going to have to find a way to shut down, and there's just levels. So it's like every second shift, expect a flurry of just ridiculous stuff that Avalanche fans, if they aren't paying attention to the series,
the pushback's coming the other way too.
Well, that's what they said about the Flames, where there was pushback 1 game. That's it. And they didn't push back. They pushed.
Yeah. Well, you know what? The Flames were the 4th best team in the Western Conference.
Levels, man. Levels.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll have to come back and do this again. Warren, thanks for being here. Thanks again to Warren Smith for joining me for the Western Conference Final preview between Edmonton and Colorado on Central Division Hockey, the podcast. If you're watching this on the YouTube page, 2 things. The audio podcast link is in the liner notes for this video. And the reason I'm telling you that is I did put together a second audio-only segment on the Central Division teams currently in search of new coaches, Winnipeg, Dallas, and Chicago specifically. But it also includes former Arizona coaching head coach Rick Tocchet and assistant Phil Housley, who could be potential coaches for NHL teams looking for new coaches for the upcoming season as well. And we do talk about Nashville and John Hines' extension, and a lot more name dropping than a typical overplayed Drake song has. If you're on the audio podcast right now, the second segment follows after a quick commercial breakaway. So just keep listening.